We now look at each one of you and understand very clearly how powerful our vessel is aimed towards the Creator. We'd like to bring that general desire into us to connect to it and to turn into one whole, one vessel as one man in one heart. We have a great and important event ahead of us, and we'd like this preparation to awaken true gratitude for this opportunity we have in the morning lesson. So let's connect together through that prayer to the Creator. In addition, we'd like to encourage each one of the friends and to remind you all that all the pennies accumulates into a great sum, and so it is with our efforts, which accumulate we gather. It seems that we're very close to the goal, so friends, let's together continue this great action and come closer to the Creator. Now we have to awaken the power of hope and life. Let's read about that. Rabash, what to look for in the assembly of friends. Each one should try to bring into the society a spirit of life and hopefulness, and infuse energy into the society. Thus, each of the friends will be able to tell himself, now I'm starting a clean slate in the work. In other words, before he came to the society, he was disappointed with the progress in the work of the Creator. But now the society has filled him with life and hopefulness. Thus through the society, he obtained the confidence and strength to overcome, because now he feels that he can achieve wholeness, and all his thoughts that he was facing a high mountain that could not be conquered, and that these were truly formidable obstructions. Now he feels that they are nothing, and he received it all from the power of the society, because each and everyone tried to instill a spirit of encouragement and the presence of a new atmosphere in the society. Active workshop. Let's bring a spirit of life and hopefulness into the 10 that we can now achieve wholeness. Let's bring a spirit of life and hopefulness into the 10 that we can now achieve wholeness. Active workshop. Holiest moment of the day. All day be beyond our corporal actions. We are aiming ourselves for this moment when we're sitting around the table and getting ready to raise a prayer to the Creator and draw the light to reach wholeness. Yes, and that moment of wholeness can come at any moment. It can arrive right now or at the end of the lesson. It may come tomorrow, but let's not delay until tomorrow. Let's do the maximum right now. This is the opportunity. And now when I'm with the friends, I feel that each friend integrates beautifully into the 10. We're already in wholeness, and this provides confidence and an opening of hope. Yes, so first of all, to see the friends in the world clear such an inspiration, such joy that they inspire through their efforts. It's really empowering now to think that we're surrounded by such friends. That inspires great confidence, lifts your spirit, and reminds us that what we're doing here is special, unique, truly above everything in this life. And for that we have to be thankful to the Creator who gives us the privilege of being here with the great Kabbalists and all the friends in the world clean. It's a gift that not many receive, and we should be thankful for it. We were truly given a great opportunity, privilege, but it also obligates us as we read before the preparation. Right. What are we doing? Why? What do we need to derive from the study? How does this proper connection between us need to affect us and the world? And that requires great effort to truly merit this great opportunity we were given. Excerpt number 2 from One must always pray for his friend, as one cannot do much for himself. For one does not deliver oneself from imprisonment, but when asking for his friend he is answered quickly. Therefore, each one should pray for his friend, and thus each works on the other's desire until all of them are answered. Again, one must always pray for his friend, as one cannot do much for himself. For one does not deliver oneself from imprisonment, but when asking for his friend, he is answered quickly. Therefore, each one should pray for his friends, and thus each works on the other's desire until all of them are answered. Silent workshop. Let's ask to feel the desire of the Creator in our hearts. Let's ask to feel the desire of the Creator in our hearts. Dear friends, in the first part of the lesson, we will watch a recorded lesson from May 1st, 2002 based on the article, One's Greatness Depends on the Measure of one's faith in the future. We will read the article together in there. 10. Pay attention. Note that the article is very long. That will take 55 minutes, thereabouts. One's greatness depends on the measure of one's faith in the future. It is written in the Zohar quote then. Shall Moses sing? It should have said sang, and it replies. But this thing depends on the future. When he complimented for that time, and complimented for the future when Israel are destined to praise this singing in the future. This singing is in female form, but it should have said this song in male form in Hebrew, and it replies. This singing is the queen praising the king. Neither said thus if it is the singing of the queen to the king. Why does it say Moses and the children of Israel? After all, the queen should have been the one who is praising, and it replies, happy are Moses and Israel, for they know how to properly praise the king for the queen. End quote. We should understand the answer that he gives about what is written in future tense, that it refers to the future. What does it come to teach us in the work? We should also understand the answer he's giving. Why does it say singing in female form? Which he interprets to relate to the intention of Malhut, meaning that Malhut is praising the king, about which asked thus. If he is referring to Malat, why does it say Moses and the children of Israel? For this reason, he must interpret it such that his intention is Moses and Israel, who know how to praise the king for Malhut. We should also understand the meaning of Moses and Israel having to praise the king for the Malhut. And why do they not have to praise the king for themselves, but rather for the Malhut? It is known that Moshe is called the faithful shepherd. Balaam interpreted that Moshe was providing Israel with faith, and faith is called Malat, kingdom or kinship. In other words, he instilled the fear of heaven, called the kingdom of heaven, into the people of Israel. This is why Moshe is called the faithful shepherd, named after the faith as it is written, quote, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moshe, end quote, meaning for Moshe instilling in them faith in the Creator. It is known that one cannot live from negativity, but rather from positivity. This is so because nourishment refers to what a person receives and enjoys receiving, and this comes to us from the purpose of creation, called his desire to do good to his creations. Therefore, a person must receive delight and pleasure so as to have something with which to delight one's body, and this is called positivity, meaning a filling, and with this filling, he satisfies his needs. But a person also needs a lack, for otherwise there is no place in which the light of life can enter. A lack is called a cleed, a vessel. This means that if one has no vessels, he cannot receive anything, and a lack is called a desire, a want, meaning that he has a desire for something, and he feels that he is lacking this thing, and he wishes to satisfy the need to the extent that he feels its absence, and to the extent that he needs to satisfy his need. This is the measure of his lack. In other words, great lack or a small lack depends on the measure of one's sense of necessity to satisfy that need. This means that if a person comes to feel that he's lacking something, and he feels that feeling in every organ, yet he does not have a strong desire to satisfy his need, there are many reasons why he does not have such great desire to satisfy his need. 1. He told his friends what he needs, and he feels the necessity for it. However, the friends made him see that what he needs is unattainable, so his friends influenced him with their views that he must accept his situation. They weakened his strength to overcome, so he can prevail over the obstacles on the way to obtaining what he wants. In consequence, the need and craving weakened as well, since he sees that he will never obtain what he needs, and for this reason, meaning because he sees that it is utterly impossible that he will ever be able to satisfy his need. This is the reason why he does not obtain his goal. It causes him to lessen his lack. It turns out that his great desire has waned due to despair. Sometimes he does not even tell his friends what he wants. He only hears from friends speaking with each other, and he hears that they have already given up, and that affects him too. In other words, the despair affects him, and he loses the enthusiasm that he had for achieving adhesion as soon as possible. Thus he loses that willpower. 3. Sometimes one thinks for himself without any slander from the outside, but he sees that each time he wishes to draw near to holiness, when he begins to analyze he realizes the opposite, but he is repressing instead of moving forward. And this causes him to lose his strength for the work. It turns out that then he collapses under his load, for he has nothing from which to receive sustenance, as he sees only negativity in darkness. Thus he loses the spirit of life that he had when he seemingly had some livelihood, called sustaining his soul. And now he feels spiritually dead, meaning that he cannot make a single movement in the work, just as if he were actually dead. It turns out this means that even though now he sees the truth, meaning the recognition of evil, it is negative, and from this one cannot receive any livelihood, since provision of the body is specifically from positivity. Therefore one must walk on the right line for two reasons. 1. To keep his desire from waning when he hears slander. 2. To receive vitality, which is specifically from positivity, meaning that it is positive that there is a matter of wholeness here. However, it is difficult to understand how, when he criticizes his work order and sees that his being immersed in self-love is the truth, how can he be told to walk on the right line, which is called wholeness? After all, as far as he can see, when he judges honestly, it is a total lie. It is known that general and particular are equal. This means that the individual follows the same order that applies to the collective. In regard to the collective, it was given to us to believe in the coming of the Messiah. I believe in the coming of the Messiah, and though he may be delayed, I await his arrival still, and one must never give up and say, I see that I cannot obtain with the Creator. This is considered the exits the exile among the nations of the world called self-love, and comes under the authority of, and comes to correct the root of his soul and cling to the life of lives. It follows that if one believes in the general redemption, he should believe that redemption will come to him in particular. Hence, one should receive wholeness for himself with respect to the future, in a way that one should depict for himself the measure of goodness, pleasure and joy that he will receive when all his needs are satisfied. This certainly gives him emotional satisfaction and energy to work to obtain this goal that he hopes to achieve. It turns out that first one must depict for himself that he is hoping for what he's hoping for, that it will make him happy and joyful if he obtains what he anticipates. However, first one should thoroughly know the goal he wants to obtain. If one does not pay close attention and much scrutiny to what he expects from his life, meaning that he should tell himself, now I have decided what I want, after analyzing the joy in life that can be obtained in the work in the world. If he has the opportunity to obtain this, he will have strength and wisdom to say, now I can thank the Creator for creating his world. Now he can wholeheartedly say, blessed is he who said, let there be the world, since I feel the delight and pleasure that it's truly worthwhile for me, and for all creations, to receive this delight and pleasure that I have now received from the purpose of creation, called his desire to do good to his creations. And although he's still far from obtaining the goal, if he nonetheless knows for certain from what he can receive his future happiness, it is as it is written. Rabbi says, anyone who engages in Talishma is rewarded with a great many things. Moreover, the whole world is worthwhile for him. He is led into the secrets of the Torah, and he becomes like an everlasting spring when he pays attention to this, to what he can achieve, meaning when he feels the importance of the goal and depicts for himself the happiness he will achieve, and the joy that he will experience when he attains it are unimaginable. Thus, to the extent that he believes in the importance of the goal, and to the extent that he believes that, though he may be delayed, I await his arrival still, he can receive the filling of the light of life from the future goal. It is known that there is inner light, and there is surrounding light. Salam interpreted inner light as referring to what one receives in the present, and surrounding light as the light that is destined to shine, but which one has not yet attained. However, the surrounding light shines to an extent in the present, to the extent of his confidence that he will attain it. He said that this is like a person who bought merchandise from the market. Since many people brought this merchandise to the market, it had little value. All the merchants wanted to sell the merchandise at any price. but there were no buyers because everyone was afraid to buy. Perhaps it might grow even cheaper. Then one man bought all the merchandise for a very low price. When he came home and told them what happened in the market, they all laughed at him. What did you do? Of course, all the merchants wanted to sell all the merchandise they had in stock. This will only make everything cheaper, and as a result, you will lose all your money. But he insisted, saying, "Now I am happier than ever, since I will profit from this merchandise not as before, when I knew I could get 20% profit from the merchandise. Instead, I'll make a 500% profit. However, I will not sell it now. I will store it, and I will take it into the market in 3 years. For by then this merchandise will not be found here in the country, and I will get the price that I want." It turns out that if he calculates how much he has earned in the present, meaning this year, then he has nothing. This is considered as him having nothing in the present with which to be happy. This is an allegory about the inner light which shines in the present. However, the surrounding light, called the light that shines specifically in the future, shines in the present too, to the extent of one's belief that in the future he will receive the full reward he hopes for, and then his joy will be complete. Now he's receiving joy and high spirits from what he will receive in the future, and this explains the above allegory. That this merchant was ridiculed by everyone for buying the merchandise in the market precisely when it was irrelevant, when no one wanted to buy it. Yet he bought it as something that others left because it was worthless. And now he is delighted because he is 100% sure that in 3 years this merchandise will not be found anywhere, and then he will get rich. And so he enjoys in the present what will happen in the future. It follows that to the extent that he believes that it will come to him, and does not despair about the future, as it is written, "Though he may be delayed, I will wait his arrival still." End quote. He can enjoy in the present what will come in the future. Thus, when a person is told that even though he walked on the left line, meaning criticized, and saw that he was in utter baseness, and he sees this truth, since he does not wish to deceive himself and justify his thoughts and actions, but rather he seeks the truth, and does not care if the truth is bitter, yet he wishes to achieve the goal for which he was born. But because of all this truth, he cannot go on living, since it is impossible to live without pleasure, called vitality and life. To live, one needs light, which revives a person. By living, it is possible to work and to reach the goal. For this reason, he must then shift to the right line, called wholeness. However, this wholeness from which he now receives that liveliness that sustains his body should be built on a basis of truth. This brings up the question, how can he receive wholeness when he sees the truth that he is in the lowest state, immersed in self-love from head to toe, and without a spark of bestow? To that he should say, "Everything I see is true." However, it is so from the perspective of the inner light. This means that in the present, he is in loneliness and has nothing from which to receive joy and life. But from the perspective of the surrounding light, which is the future, he believes that, quote, "Though he may be delayed, I await his arrival still." End quote. It turns out that through the surrounding light that shines in relation to the future, he can draw it, so it will shine in the present, and to the extent of the faith and confidence, he has in the coming of the Messiah on the personal level, he can draw vitality and joy, so it will shine in the present. And it follows that now that he is walking on the right line to receive wholeness, it is the real truth, since the surrounding light shines in the present, and besides, it is a path of truth, and since by believing in the coming of the Messiah on a personal level, it is a great remedy, that through the commandment of faith, the future will draw near to the present in him. This means that the surrounding lights will be internal. This is regarded as the lights actually clothing in the present. It is called the surrounding will become internal. Thus from here, meaning from faith, from believing that in the end he will reach the goal, even though reason shows him each time that he is retreating from the goal and not advancing, he nevertheless overcomes and goes above reason. And then faith itself humiliates each time in the form of penny by penny, join into a great amount, until he is rewarded with permanent, whole faith, which is the attainment of the light of in the illumination of as it is written in the commentary. Now we can understand what we asked about why the Z explains that this is why it is written shall sing in future tense. By that it implies that Israel are destined to praise through song in the future. What does that come to teach us in the work? In matters of work, we should know what we have now in the present, and know what we must do. Thus, what can we learn about what the future holds? As we explained, we must walk on the right line, which is wholeness, and receive vitality from it, because it is impossible to live from negativity. Hence there is advice to feel wholeness from what will be in the future. This is the meaning of what the righteous call singing in the future. In other words, now in the present they are singing about what they will receive in the future. This means that to the extent that they picture the delight and pleasure they will receive in the future, they can feel it in the present provided they have faith that there is a future, meaning that in the future everyone will be corrected. This is something one can already be thankful for in the present to the extent that he feels it. This is the measure of the praise that he can give in the present, and besides for receiving life in the present from positivity, he gains from the goal in general being important for him, because he must picture for himself the delight and pleasure in store for the creatures to receive, and each time he contemplates the matter, he gradually sees a bit more of what he can receive in the future, meaning what has been prepared for us by the purpose of creation. And although he sees that in his current state he is miles away from the goal, this depends on the measure of his faith in the goal, as in the example of the allegory above. This follows the rule: all that is certain to be collected is deemed collected. With the above, we can understand what the Zohar explains, that the reason why white right shall sing in future 10 is to imply that Israel is destined to praise this singing in the future. This is so because we must know this, so we can receive joy and vitality in the present from what will be in the future. By this we can sing in the present, as if now we were receiving all the delight and pleasure. This is regarded as being able to receive illumination from a surrounding. In other words, the surrounding shines in the internal from afar, meaning that although a person is still far from obtaining the delight and pleasure, he can still draw illumination from the surrounding light also in the present. Now we will explain what we asked about the Zohar, explaining why he writes this singing in female form. It is because Moses and Israel know how to properly praise the king or the queen. Then we asked, why do Moses and Israel not praise the king for themselves? First, we must understand why we have to praise the king. In corporality, we understand that a flesh and blood king needs honors to be respected. He enjoys the praises that the people give him. But with regard to the Creator, why does he need us to praise him and sing before him chants and songs? It is a known rule that everything we say in regard to the Creator is only by way of by your actions we know you. However, there is no attainment in himself whatsoever. Rather, all we speak relates to the attainment of the lower one. This is the reason why one must praise and thank the Creator to that extent. One can test how much importance and greatness of the king he feels. The purpose of creation is to do good to his creations, meaning for the creatures to enjoy him, and by the measure of the greatness of the giver, there's meaning and pleasure in giving that they give him in order to delight. And when one tries to give 10 thanks, he already has reason for considering and scrutinizing the giving, what he received and from whom he received, meaning the greatness of the giving and the greatness of the giver. It follows that one's gratitude should not be because the upper one will enjoy it, but so that the lower one will enjoy it. Otherwise it is similar to the allegory that Barisam said about the verse, "Who has not taken my name in vain?" He asked, what does it mean that a person takes in vain? Does it mean that he was given a soul from above in vain? He said that it's similar to a child being given a bag of gold coins. He is delighted about the coins because they look nice and are lovely to look at, but the child is incapable of assessing the value of the gold coins. From this we can understand that the gratitude and praise that we give to the Creator are only to benefit the creatures. meaning that we have something by which to praise the King. This means that when one tries to praise the Creator, this is the time when he's capable of feeling the importance of the gift and the importance of the giver of the gift. For this reason, what one should mind most is the praise that one gives to the King. This enables him to be given every time anew. Otherwise, if one cannot appreciate the King's gift, one cannot be given anything, because he falls under the definition of who is a fool? He who loses what he's given. And what is the reason that a fool loses what he's given? This is simple. He is a fool. He does not appreciate the importance of the matter, so he does not pay attention to keeping the gift that he has been given. For this reason, the extent of the importance of the gift is his keeping of it. Thus, he can be in a state of constant ascension because it is evident that he does not lose what he's given, for he appreciates it. It follows that from the above that one may have many descents because he does not appreciate the gift of the King. In other words, he cannot appreciate the measure of the importance of the nearing that he has been given from above, a desire and thought that it is worthwhile to be a servant of the Creator. And since he did not know how to appreciate the importance of the matter, meaning the calling that he was given to enter and serve the King, he might even corrupt if he serves the King without knowing how to keep himself from blemishing something. In that state, a person is thrown back to a place of garbage and waste. In that state, he sustains himself on the same waste that cats and dogs search to sustain themselves, and he too searches for provision for his body in that place. He does not see that he can find provision elsewhere, meaning during the descent, those things that he said were waste and unfit as food for humans, but are suitable as food only for animals. He himself chases that provision and has no desire for human food because he finds it completely tasteless. For this reason, the stability of the states of ascent depends primarily on the importance of the matter. This is why it depends mainly on the praise and gratitude he gives to being accepted from above. This is so because the praises themselves that he gives to the Creator enhances importance and esteem. This is why we are commanded to think very seriously about praising. There are 3 discernments in regards to praising. 1. The measure of the giving. This means that the importance of the gift is according to the measure of praise and gratitude that one gives for the gift. 2. The greatness of the giver, meaning if the giver is an important person. For example, if the King gives a present to someone, the gift may be a very small thing, but it will still be very important. In other words, the measure of the praise and gratitude does not take the greatness of the gift into account, but rather measures the greatness of the giver, meaning the same person might give to 2 people, but to one the giver is more important, and he recognizes the importance and greatness of the giver, and thus he will be more grateful than the other who does not recognize the importance of the giver to the same extent. 3. The greatness of the giver regardless of whether or not he gives. Sometimes the King is so important in the eyes of a person that the person has a strong desire to merely speak to the King, but not because he wishes to speak to the King so that the King will give him something. He doesn't want anything, but his whole pleasure is in having the privilege of speaking to the King. However, it is impolite to come to the King without some request, and so he is searching for some request that the King may grant. In other words, he says that he wants to come to the King so the King will give him something, but in truth, he says that he wants the King to give him something only externally. In his heart, he does not want anything from the King. Must speak. Just having the ability to speak to the King is enough for him, and it does not matter for him if the King has given him something or not. When people on the outside see that he did not receive a thing from the King, and look at him as he walks out of the King's house delighted and elated, they laugh at him. They tell him, "What a fool you are. How mindless are you? You can see for yourself that you are leaving as empty-handed as you came in. You walked into the King's hall to ask for something of the King, yet you walked out empty-handed. So why the joy?" We can understand this if while a person prays to the Creator to give him something, we can discern about it. One prays to the Creator to give him what he demands of the Creator. If the Creator accepts his demand for the prayer to be granted, when one receives what he wants, he is willing to thank the Creator, and the extent of salvation that he received from the Creator is the extent of his joy, high spirits, praise, and gratitude. In other words, everything is measured by the degree of salvation he received from the Creator, the measure of the greatness of the giver. In other words, to the extent that he believes in the greatness of the Creator, this is what determines for him what he receives from the Creator. That is, even though in the eyes of the receiver it is a small thing, he still received something from the Creator. Thus, he can already be happy and praise and thank the Creator, since it is the giver who is important to him, as in the above-mentioned allegory, the greatness of the giver without giving. He too has great importance. In other words, the king is so important in his eyes that he does not want anything from the king, but will consider it a great fortune if he can speak even a few words with the king. And the reason why he comes in with some bequests is only superficial, since one cannot come before the king without some bequest. Yet he did not come for the king to grant his request. The reason he said he was asking for something was only for the external ones who do not understand that speaking to the king is the most valuable giving. But the external ones do not understand it. When we speak of a single body, we should say that the external ones are the thoughts that come to a person from the outside world, meaning those who have no concept of internality and have no tools, have no means by which to understand that the internality of the king is what counts. Rather, they value the king only by what extends from the king to them, which is called the externality of the king. But they have no clue of the internality of the king, meaning the king himself, and not what extends from the king outward. Hence these thoughts mock a person when he says, "Since I just spoke to the king, it does not matter if the king is granting my wish, rather his only wish is the eternality of the king, not what extends from him." Therefore, if a person prays to the Creator and does not see that the Creator has given him something, since what matters to him is the eternality of the king, he can be happy and rejoice in having been rewarded with speaking to the king. Yet external thoughts within him wish to revoke that joy in him, because they consider only the vessels of reception. But he has received from the king in his vessels of reception, while he tells them, "I am delighted and joyful, and I praise and thank the king simply for having given me the chance to speak with him, and this is enough for me." Moreover, he says to his external ones, "Know that I want nothing from the king except to praise him and thank him. This I adhere to the king because I want to bestow upon him by praising him. I have nothing else to give him." It follows that now I am considered a servant of the Creator, and not a servant of myself. For this reason I cannot hear your telling me, "What have you gained?" For example, all year long you engaged into a prayer, keeping all the mitzvot, but you are still standing on the same degree as a year ago or 2 ago. Thus, why the joy that you praise the Creator and say, "This is my game, that I spoke to the Creator many times, and what else do I need?" In other words, if the king had given me something, I might have received it in order to receive, but now that I have nothing in my hand, I am happy and thank the Creator because my intention in the work was only to bestow. However, since in that state a person is telling the truth, he faces strong resistance from the external ones, who cannot tolerate one who is walking on the path of truth. If his only aim is to bestow, in that state, he has a great war and they wish to shatter his joy. They make him think that the opposite is true, that what they are telling him is the path of truth, and that he is deceiving himself thinking that he is right. In this world, a lie usually succeeds. For this reason, he needs great strengthening and to tell them, "I am walking on the path of truth, and now I want to hear no criticism. If there's truth in your words, I ask that you will come to me with your complaints to show me the truth. When I decide it is time for criticism, only at that time will I be willing to listen to your views." It therefore follows that in order for one to have joy in the work of the Creator, all he needs is faith. In other words, when he believes in the greatness of the Creator, he does not need the king to give him anything. Simply being able to speak to the king is all he wants, meaning to speak to the Creator, as mentioned in the third discernment of giving praise. If he pays more attention to praising the king, then high inspiration will come to him by itself, because he does not want anything from the king. This is similar to the it is known that at its end does not wish to receive the light of, but more wishes to bestow upon the emanator, as the emanator bestows upon, and she wants equivalence of form. In that state the abundance called light, after the comes by itself. This means that the receiver wishes to engage in. Hence the abundance is called light of. It is similar here when a person wants nothing of the king except to bestow upon the king and pays attention to what he thinks. An inspiration from above comes upon him by itself when he engages in singing and praising of the king to the extent that he has prepared himself. Now we can understand the matter of Moses and Israel singing and praising the king for the queen, and not the queen herself. It is known that everything we say about the upper worlds is only in relation to the souls. That Marot is called the collective soul of Israel, or the assembly of Israel. It is explained in the study of the tense that the soul of came out from the interior of the worlds, and from which he received, and they all came out from called, and who gives to the Malat is called king. Since Malat is the receiver for the souls, it follows that Malat cannot receive abundance for the people of Israel, because they are still unfit, having no vessels of bestow. Otherwise it will all go to the who are called dead, since there is reception in order to receive in them, which is called separation and remoteness from the Creator, who is called the life of lives. This is why they are called dead. In the Zohar, it is considered that a person must be concerned about the sorrow of the Shinar, meaning sorrow at not being able to receive abundance for her children, who are the people of Israel. She's called the assembly of Israel, because she assembles within her the abundance that she should give to Israel. Therefore, when the people of Israel engage in equivalence of form, there's room for Malt to receive the upper abundance from the king, who is called the giver, so as to give to the people of Israel. This is called Malat, who is called the queen, praising the king for the abundance she has received from him. Likewise, when she cannot receive abundance for Israel from the king, it is called the sorrow of the Shriner, and when she can receive abundance, she's called the mother of the sons is happy, and she praises the king. Yet all sorrow and joy relate only to the whole of Israel. This is why the Zohar says that Moses and Israel say the song meaning praise the king for the queen. It means that the reason why Moses and Israel praise the king is for the queen, which means that they have established themselves to praise the king, since what the king was to give to Moses in Israel was not for themselves, but for Malat. In other words, they cannot tolerate the sorrow of their, which is why they engage in equivalence of form so that can bestow. This is why it says happy are Moses in Israel, for they know how to properly praise the king for the queen. We will now move to a lesson from May 1st, 2002. The greatness depends on the measure of faith in the future. The person rises through the degrees during the period of preparation towards crossing the barrier, entering the king's hall, and every time he is this state where he receives a great illumination from above that sustains him, fills him, awakens him, and then he falls. Instead of receiving an even greater illumination, he receives darkness, and here in the state of darkness, the person is measured. What's happening with the person in the state of darkness? That the higher he rose, if he didn't cross the barrier, then when the light doesn't shine, he becomes the opposite beast. He doesn't know anything. Nothing matters except to just exist in a beastly form. That's it. He feels that he hasn't advanced the same way he was in his beastly nature. All these falls a year ago or two. Now it is the same thing true. He was a beast and now he's a beast as well. If that divine spirit departs him, he remains a beastly spirit. In these states, it is possible to measure if he's in some kind of advancement, if he's advancing in bestow or not, because if he can read even a few words, think about them in a very simple way, not deep, but if he can do it, if he still has some kind of appreciation, or the darker state gets, well then you can say that he has some beginnings of pests of bestow, because he sees that for himself he has nothing, no fulfillment, and he lives only from the state where he's connected to the king, and then in that state he's not getting confused by pleasure shining upon him with some feeling of the self, some nice feeling that he receives, and is all inflated, but rather, in truth, there's no calculation he can make for himself, and he cannot justify the Creator because he doesn't receive anything from him, and so he has to live only on faith. What is faith here? Faith in spirituality beyond the barrier is the light of grace, and complete faith is the light of with the illumination of for us. Faith is, well, we don't have the light if we don't have the light of in the illumination of faith for us, means that a person received some illumination from above which sustains him for a time, and that is faith, the light that sustains him, or as we have in the fall actually, where this illumination departs and only the importance he receives from the society only that not from above from the society, meaning he hears previously, he heard, and this serves him in the present that this is important. This importance, now during the darkness, he equipped himself with it with this importance previously when he could hear and serve the society, and he was in high spirits from what he was excited by what he was told and what he read and what he heard from the love these three sources. Yes, the society, the love, and the books. So the greatness of the goal that he received not from above everything departs now, but from his environment, the recognition of the greatness of the goal, meaning its verbal right received it verbally now according to the importance he has for spirituality during the time of darkness. He feels this illumination from without, which is called faith, and it sustains him. The light sustains him. Without their light, there's nothing to speak of. But what is the cause of this light? Either that light comes to an awakening from above, and then the person is in a good state, and he's willing to invest, nothing matters, or nothing can stop him, or that light, that illumination comes due to the effort that the person made, his investment in the importance of the goal, equipping himself with the feeling of the importance of the goal, and then, according to his effort, the light of importance shines for him, the light of faith as we call it, and then the darkness doesn't matter to him, even though he enters the king's hall and leaves and doesn't receive anything. He thanks him for not giving him nothing, anything. He thanks him for being in a fall, in a state of a beast, at present as in many previous descents. He thanks him for receiving these states from him. He doesn't measure the states in terms of how much do I have, how much do I get from every fall, every ascent. Instead, he simply understands that by this he's using his vessels of reception, and he advances and measures his states according to the magnitude of the efforts that he can activate, and so to receive the light of faith by his own power from below. And that is the right way to measure it, that a person reaches a state wherein both the sense, only one thing is important to him, only from him and upwards, towards the Creator, and his attitude towards the Creator will not change. And so we say that he fills with his light, with the reflected light, with the light of faith from below upwards. He fills the vessel, instead of that light coming from above downwards. Then it is said that he's willing to give to the Creator. What does he give? The Creator by filling himself with this light. That's his giving. Yes, instead of the Creator filling him. And then the Creator clothes to the same extent within the person, and both the direct light and the reflected light are clothed together, and that is called inner light. We need to read this article again to go through it slowly. Bash doesn't write about these states for no reason, and we can see on ourselves. When we look at each other, we can see more or less what states we're in, ascending, descending as a group, and individually. We have to reach a state where this doesn't change us. What state I'm in, whatever states sense, the sense, joy, anxiety, whatever influences me, the presence of or the lack of illumination from above, that poses no obstacle. We need to fill this black immediately with the light of faith. Yes, according to the drawing we always make, a direct light comes, and as a result the reflected light comes, then there's fulfillment. Here there needs to be work from below. There has to be reflected light first, then there's faith and direct light clothes in that. According to the drawing, the direct light comes and, yes, it interfaces with the screen and the screen reflects it. We are in a place where it's before. The direct light comes and strikes the screen, because if there's no screen, the direct light doesn't come. We don't feel that it exists. To the extent that there is a screen, we begin to feel pressure from the direct light, because after the restriction, there is a decision in Malat that I am guarding all the conditions of the restrictions so that in no individual desire of mine will there ever be anything outside of what was decided upon in my general desire. I was restricted. What does it mean I was restricted? No desire of mine will go to receive in order to receive. And as an outcome of that, there is no desire to receive without the screen feeling the light. It doesn't go to receive in order to receive. The restriction restricts it, if makes it consume it to without light. Yes, meaning we don't feel a pressure from the we don't feel pressure from the Creator wanting to clothe us in our desire, because our desires aren't corrected. To the extent that you have a screen in order to be stowed, then to that extent you will immediately feel pressure from the upper light, which wants to clothe within the corrected desire. The corrected desire is called soul. Now and then, there's a question then. The light comes and strikes the screen. Where's the light of faith here? Reflected light. All these things, they exist before that in the time of darkness. You build a screen from the dark, and when there is a screen to the extent that you have a screen, to that extent, you have the power to sustain the restriction and the power of faith. What is a screen? Screen over the vessels of bestow, and screen over the vessels of reception, either to bestow in order to bestow or even to receive in order to bestow, meaning the measure of the screen, the magnitude of the screen, attests to the measure of faith. We need to equip ourselves with that. Previously, beforehand, of course the light does this screen without light, the light of Absak, yes, but the demand for it we develop only through our efforts from below, and the effort from below comes through inspiration by books and authors, as we say, the environment, not from above. Here there needs to be exertion from the person, so the vessel precedes the light. Yes, when a person feels ascent, he feels the ascent in his inner vessel, and when he feels a descent, it's joining the external. That from this first restriction it was empty of light, then the surrounding light in the external vessel can't receive until it has a screen. Wait, no. And in the ascent, what light did you have? Internal. What is an ascent for him? If he doesn't feel light, there's light that he doesn't feel, and he calls that an ascent. So, in what vessel is light clothed? I don't understand. Are we talking about the time of preparation? If we're talking about the time of preparation, we have a person. He has a desire to receive. This desire to receive is in order to receive, and he needs to gradually make all kinds of distinguishments, discernments. But between all his desires, is there a certain desire where light can clothe? I'm saying it doesn't matter on all the states we go through until the barrier. It's according to what we have in the inner light. It's not the same thing. So I'm also saying that the surrounding light that's written here, you have to put a screen on that too. Then it can enter and be as if it's also inner light. And so our work is specifically that on that point to all the barrier. What you're saying is I have a desire to receive. My desire to receive is without a screen. Above the barrier, the surrounding light illuminates for me. This surrounding light will clothe me when I have a screen. So, all my work is on such a screen in which the surrounding light will clothe me. Yes, no, I don't need to think that this surrounding light, meaning certainly I think that I want to attain it. I'm drawn to it. But the correction is not according to that. Certainly I long for this light to fill me and be in me. But the correction is when this light is not there. When the surrounding light departs, do I fill myself with the light of faith in its place? But the light of faith, like he said, it's the light of faith illuminates for me, not just from this surrounding light. This light of faith illuminates me if I consider my relation with the Creator, that I have an attitude towards Him, not to receive from him, but to the extent in which I long for him. That's not the root of the screen. That's the root of the screen. My attitude, my relation to, as we say, the greatness of the goal, the greatness of the creator is the root of the screen. That too is in order to receive. But it's already the root for the screen. And when can I say that? Yes, I have it. When I'm in the darkness. When this surrounding light is not illuminating. This surrounding light is not a light that corrects me. It's a light that illuminates for me from. It will become internal light. It's not the light if we should put it that way. So, the work when the surrounding light is there or not. So according to that, my relation to the creator, if I think about it, that's a route to the screen, and then the barrier is the work. This, specifically at the time of darkness, a person sees that he's a beast, that he remains a beast. That means that from above he is not awakening the Adam in him, how he himself can make the Adam in himself to awaken to the creator. Yes, what work does a person have if during the descent, during the darkness, most of the darkness comes from the environment, from the path, if he doesn't get inspiration, our ascents and descents the way we count them are not according to the true state, but rather the feeling in the desire to receive. It illuminates me. Today, I'm in an ascent. It doesn't illuminate to me. Oh, I'm in this depression today. In a descent, meaning I examine according to how much I have in my belly or not, in my vessels of perception. And this is not an ascent and a descent, spiritually. It's an ascent and descent, meaning how much I have in my pocket, in my vessels of reception. How can I really measure my ascent and descent? My ascent and descent can be measured only when it doesn't illuminate for me. Do I rise up to the creator on my own, meaning not in order to receive from him, but uplift myself because he is great in my eyes? Can I rise up to 10% or gram or 20 gram, or am I not capable whatsoever? That's the measurement, meaning the measurement cannot be when I'm receiving the abundance, because that cancels out the vessel. A measure can be only during darkness. If during the darkness I perform a restriction upon myself and I say I don't care whatsoever what's happening, as long as I don't want to be influenced from the presence of the light, or a lack of it I don't want to be influenced by, that I want to relate to the creator in how he is without it relating to me. If I'm capable, let's say, to deal with the states of darkness, this is as if I'm in a state in which I hold on to the restriction, that is that I come to a state myself that I don't want it to illuminate for me. I don't want to travel, to walk on the path to the purpose of creation by the fuel that he's giving me. He's giving me light, so I go. He doesn't give me, I don't go. No, I want to go by my light. What's my light? That during the darkness the goal will be important for me, and this will serve as my fuel. And the importance of the goal I myself within me can only develop, and specifically in the darkness. I don't feel darkness, that's why it's called faith. Do I feel good or not depends on whether I can go with the light of faith or not. If my light of faith will serve for me in place of the illumination that was from above, then I feel good. If this light of faith will not serve me in its weak or lacks altogether, then they say that the light of faith must be like the light that departed. If it's like that, if a person receives fuel from himself, what does it mean for himself? He's not a supplier of energy, a person, but there's the importance of the goal towards the creator, and then from above he receives the light of faith, the light, but the light fills him, he can live. This is already phase 2, it's already the quality of beiner. If he's capable of this, well, if he has the quality of beiner, beyond that it's just complete faith. That is, these are states that we go through, but we don't quite understand how they work, and also all our states, these as are in this desire to receive, but it's certainly preparation for true states, meaning what do we need to do? Bottom line, after all these explanations, we forget everything. Besides one thing, we need to appreciate that you have that you're given the feeling of darkness. That's already a sign that you're starting to receive an opportunity from above to develop the vessels. Today we are now learning. In part 2 we're studying the records. Yes, in part 4, when is the vessel created, the expansion and the departure of the light leads to all the flashes there within the descending reflected light that beats the record and all kinds of things. The departure of the light builds the clay, and its filling has no feeling. I feel like that full discernments there are none. In order to lead to discernments, we necessarily need the departure, because during the time of the departure, you have the inner clashes between lights. And these clashes between lights give birth to the vessels, the descending reflected light and the light of the record, two lights which contradict one another, resist one another, and the general desire to receive feels this clash and friction between them. It receives the feeling called a clay. Hence the time of departure is the blessed time. It's the building of the vessels. It's impossible without it. The fact that we're scared and we fall, and that we're afraid of those states, and feel ourselves truly, sometimes worse than death, that's a feeling inside our beastliness. But in the spiritual key, this state must lead to an opportunity for ascent. That is discern within you two parts. Your animal, your beast suffers, the soul must specifically uplift. Now it is receiving an opportunity to awaken in faith and to receive the light of faith. What's the upliftment here? This upliftment, this ascent here is in being aware and appreciating the greatness of the Creator. When can I say that He is great in my eyes? If I receive a bunch from Him, then certainly He is great. But when I don't receive from Him anything, and moreover that I receive darkness from Him, then you should say He's great, meaning then you won't be dependent on your desire to receive to be great in the soul or to be greater in the body. This is two different things. Slowly it'll go, believe me, it will. What changes in the states, let's say, before the path and after you're on their path, according to what I understand. It's an awareness, it's the way you relate to this state. Sometimes it seems just like psychology, that of changing your attitude, your relation. The initial years, after about 6 months, these are very confusing years. A person becomes very confused until these discernments are created in him, with which he can somewhat deal with, sought in certain shelves and drawers, and this to here and this to there. It takes time. It takes years. 3, 4, 5 first years. It's impossible to go through. To acquire a spiritual vessel is a different nature. Meaning, look how many people are suffering and laboring in order to acquire something from this world, in direct vessels of the desire to receive. What development of all the senses and qualities and desires need to be, and what needs to be invested. And you want to receive a vessel that is not of this world. Yes, what does it matter what he gets pleasure from? The pleasure is receiving it. So what are you correcting by this? Do you hear the question? What does a person care what he's receiving pleasure from? I have a beast, a desire to receive, and this desire to receive enjoys from receiving. It enjoys from receiving the desire. Receive, and that's it. The light departs, not good. The light comes. Yes, good, the desire to receive, and the desire to receive, there's the point in the heart. I want to develop it. In order to develop it, I can do this only through the light of faith. Because it's a desire to bestow. It's a spark from the screen that I once had before the shattering of Adam. What's the point in the heart? It's a spark that has fallen into the clipot, into the shells. From this spark, as we learned, this is a part of reflected light that I had when I was in. Now I need this part, this tiny spark to inflate. How will I inflate it? By the greatness of the goal, by the greatness of the Creator. How will I do this? In relation with the whole other desire that is excited or not excited in me from the illumination from above, and the time where it's not enthused by the illumination from above. Then I can see what's going on with my point in the heart. Has it grown or not? Can I do something from within it or not? If the illumination from above departs, and I'm not capable of anything, then the point is a point. What is a point? A point is like in each and everyone in the street. It's also not there, and that's it, and I just feel despair, meaning I operate only from the desire to receive. If during the time that the desire to receive cannot give me anything, then I operate from that point, and in it I feel vitality. In it I can feel the vitality in my point in the heart only in the state where I long for the Creator, meaning in the state of darkness. Why does the darkness affect my studies? not darkness in the point, where darkness is in the general desire to receive. Well, it won't help. As many questions answers I questions. I ask answer, you know that all the answers are just like that for the intellect. Whoever receives an answer to a question from within receives. He wrote there in the beginning that a person has to reach despair when he can't reach greatness of the Creator. On the other hand, we say that only when a person really reaches despair a true prayer can come out. So how does that work out? As long as a person feels that he can keep going, so he won't reach despair. So how do these things work out together? On one hand, you're not allowed to reach despair. On the other hand, you must reach despair in order to really pray. We're not allowed to reach despair, and we must reach despair. I'm prohibited myself to cause reaching despair. That's called it's not allowed to reach despair. We must reach despair. We must reach a state in which from above your being clashed to such an extent that you're despaired from your own forces, as it's written, and then one can bring forth a prayer. That can't all be done at once like this. You see, altogether, he wants to explain a few of the states that we go through before the barrier. He wrote 5 volumes. Our language is a dead language. It doesn't give us. We don't have the means. Only the light can. When it fills the vessel, it gives everything filling. That's called, for us, this filling is spread over intellectual filling, emotional, mental, 1,000 of things, and nothing is not, meaning the true filling of the desire to receive. Net receiving from the filling of the light is the final answer, and this way nothing will help us. You can go around and to want to somewhat more and more attain, nothing will be there, meaning we seemingly want through the multiplicity of external clothing attain the inner filling. It doesn't go that way. You can tell me 1,000 years about some good food, if I didn't eat it, and I didn't enjoy it, if I truly didn't fill myself with it, all those words are not worth a thing. Later I can, according to the words that you're telling me, to also say, you know, what I heard from him. Oh boy, this dish, and then I tell someone else, and the someone else says to you, no, I heard from him that he heard from him that he ate it, and it was. That's what we're doing alto together in this world. You understand? So what is it worth? What comes to you in a logical way? There's a contradiction here. It's not logical. That's for sure, that there's a clash between the desire to receive and the desire to bestow. Hence, we're always in misunderstanding, uncertainty, and we cannot write that every spiritual state, the problem in it is that it includes within it 2 contradicting things, meaning the clash to begin within nature exists. And he says that what is the real problem in us if we're just in the desire to receive still? Vegetative animal, with the speaking also until he speaks, is not as also animal belongs to the animal. If I'm in that nature, then everything's fine. Yes, from the 4 phases of direct light that I'm studying. Route 1, 2, 3, everything's arranged nicely. Phase 4, when she begins, wonderful. Immediately it has troubles and reaches a restriction. Before phase 4, there's no restriction. There's no desire of my own, nothing. I'm operated upon from above. The Creator gives me thoughts, drives, and desires, fears, anxieties, hormones, all kinds of things that I'm driven by, and I go and perform them like a puppet, like a true puppet, like a yo-yo, and I have no problem. There's no clash. I'm in the desire to receive. He activates me this way from above, and everything works fine. When their point of the heart begins to be in this desire to receive, this is already a messenger from that world, from beyond the barrier, from the desire to bestow, at which point a person becomes split, at which point a problem begins in it. 2 contradicted things to one another. The spiritual nature and corporeal nature in the same subject in that person. It's a true, it's on the way to explode, to go crazy. It's clear that it can't be together. That's why we're so poor things, you know, such poor things. And we need to understand we have no choice. The Creator entered into us, inevitably in all of us, in all of humanity, the desire to receive and desire to bestow together. And it won't help us. We must be in this split until we cover this split. So the desire to receive will be also in order to bestow like the second nature, like the spiritual nature. And this is you're told that you have to reach the spiritual nature. You're not even asked about that. So you will remain in this split until you desire to receive is made into desire to bestow. And this is where all these types of nature, this nature of this world and of the spiritual one, then they will be back together as one. Only then we have peace, calm peace only to that extent. That's it. So you're saying that there's a certain clash. What a clash. This is the greatest clash of all. And until the final correction, this clash is actually in us. That's how it is. So how can a person see, or humanity, that if a person is just suffering from psychological, there's no psychological suffering. There's no psychological sufferings. He writes that all the created beings, still vegetative and animal, and also the animal of man, his beastly body, the beastly soul like a cow with the soul of a cow, they all ascend and descend together with a person. It's as we learned from the 4 phases of direct light. We have root 1, 2, 3, and they all exist for the sake of phase 4. So it's the same. Root 1, 2, 3 are still vegetative animal, which exist for the sake of the speaking. That's it. You're learning everything from spirituality. Look above, and how much you know about this, you'll see that here it's this against that, and there's no question here. So what do you need to do in us? Seemingly, the first 3, the initial 3 phases are against phase 4. We need to make it so it will, this will serve that. No? Well, ask. He speaks of 2 states of blessing and prayer. So I don't understand before the barrier what's the purpose of the blessing and what's the purpose of the prayer. Another time. No. This is it's a subject that's very, the spark from the descending reflected light, and then the colliding with the record and light of faith. Is it all connected? No. What light of faith we have? The descending reflected light meets the record in the vessel, and the spark emerges, and the descending reflected light enters the clay, and the record emerges outwards, and the spark is the third thing that's born. That's the future vessel. So what are you asking? Is there a connection between that vessel and the future light of faith? No, we're not talking yet about what light of faith. What light of faith? We're talking about the lights, the records that exist within the vessel. The light of faith can only be in darkness. What does phase 2 say? I am ridding myself of light of the phase 2 of phase of 4 phases of direct light. I'm relieving myself from the light if I don't want it. I just want to be similar to the Creator, meaning the awareness of the host in phase 1 led phase 1 to a state where she says, I don't want to use my vessel of reception. I want to just feel the landlord, not what I'm receiving from him. I want him, and not what I deserve from him. What comes to me from him, I'm erasing now. I can't at once use this and that. Do you understand? This is what's happening to us. You relating to a person where you can either give him or receive from him. You can't at once do both those actions. When you perform later an action in receiving in order to bestow, then you're performing 2 actions. But that is only possible if you're doing such an opposite action using the desired receive. Phase 2 is not capable of doing this. Yet, later, when she expresses her desire in the truth and she doesn't want to breach what the Creator is, what she's about to receive, but she does want to relate to him and what she's receiving from him. That's why phase 2, her true X expression, is in Malad in the lower H, the first H in the lower He. But she's not capable of doing this at once to begin with. Far she says about phase 1, that's it. Phase 1, I don't want to feel, that's it. If I want to relate to you, to your personality, I am allowed to relate to what I'm receiving for you. I'm not receiving anything. I want to relate to you. Is the light of to you will be the attitude I want to give you. So, phase 1 and phase 2 are contradicted to one another, and then phase 3 makes some form of not equivalence, but some kind of planning of how this is possible of doing in phase 4. It has a real desire upon phase root, whereas phase root returns once more to phase 2, but phase 2, which will be in Phase 4 will be already receiving in order to bestow, meaning phase 4 with the screen and reflected light precisely expresses phase 2, and then there can be both reception and bestow together. Therefore in us will spark in the in. The heart is put in us, meaning the desire to bestow, and we begin to live, now split out of these two parts. Yes, where desire to receive and desire to bestow, we have no choice. We must as fast as possible reach correction to return back. We won't be given, we're given to forget a little. So a person, when he's given to forget, is willing to run away. At least he'll be in silence inside his desire to receive. Understand? Let me just live this way, and my animalistic self, I'll exist, and we're done. Leave me, because this split is very hard to live with. And in truth, this correction is despite reaching this correction to things that are in peace between them. This is called the Creator will bless his people with might and bless them with peace. Meaning these two kinds of nature together. Again, we're not going to learn. Let's share impressions from the lesson. What from it are we taking to implement? And the 10, we talked about the matter of faith. Partial faith is using the light of, complete faith is the illumination of in, where illumination of in the light of, and below the barrier we receive the importance of the goal during the time of darkness, the importance of the goal from the environment, and whoever sustains the importance of the goal, that's called the illumination that comes from above, that sustains a person after all the states, ascends the sense. He rose above them. He'll hold on to the goal until after he crosses the barrier, and then in partial faith or later in complete faith. Just like said, he wrote 5 volumes to explain all kinds of states you go through before the barrier, so it's many states, and an air path, as it says that the wall to receive obviously starts drying out gradually, and still you need some livelihood to sustain it. But from those low states, that's where a person has to make the effort to awaken himself with society, and the inner force he got before it. That's the important time, during the descent when it's dark. Exactly. We need to appreciate that. You're given the feeling of darkness. This is a sign that you're already being given from above the opportunity to develop the vessels. Ruff said either the light comes from above and then a person feels good, or the light comes from the efforts a person makes where he gives importance to the goal, and then the light of faith illuminates for him, and then the darkness is not important to him. Even if he comes to the king and goes without receiving anything, he's thankful for it. That's why it's important during the ascent to equip yourself with importance, because that's what holds a person in the darkness, what he worked on during the descent. It turns out that specifically the darkness is the workplace where a person can measure himself, and our advancement depends on how much light a person can hold on to during the times of darkness. And this is the matter of the importance of the goal which he acquires from the environment and all kinds of other actions he does. But here what we measure is advancement, and the measurement itself builds a need and importance in the greatness of the Creator. The measure of faith is actually the measure of a screen a person has, and the feeling of darkness is an opportunity from above for building of the vessels. Without a vessel there is no light. When the beast suffers, so it's an opportunity for the spiritual point, it can start growing. There's also the matter of the point in the heart. What is the point in the heart? It's the spark that has fallen into the kapot, into the shells from. This spark, like we learned, is part of the reflected light that I had when I was in. Raf said now I need to grow that part, this spark, this small spark. And what do I grow? By the greatness of the goal. We need to appreciate it. When you have darkness, it's a sign that you start getting an opportunity from above to develop your vessels. And the key is a key of importance. To the extent in which you have importance, you can, meaning that's how you measure your quality of bestow towards the Creator, the extent in which you're capable of seemingly awakening light, internal light force, motivation, specifically in the place that the Creator does not illuminate for you. That's the place where you can awaken, specifically the place where the desire to receive does not feel fulfilling is the place of bestow. It can be expressed there. Yes, friends, we are in an advanced stage of the preface to the wisdom of Tabarler. This series of lessons that Rav gave and we're already in an advanced lesson 6, the part its third part. Hence we will dive right into the lesson and then we'll have time for questions and to scrutinize what the place that we're studying, and we're not forgetting why we're studying about the upper worlds. So we had a taboo below the taboo, the general taboo of Gala, until the till the middle of we had the second restriction. This new place is called allow the light is allowed till there and not beyond that point. The vessels of are called together they are called the vessels below the pillar until the sum are called I. The third of is called Oni, is called, and is called. We didn't learn this, we learned, we did. That's why I'm just saying it briefly. The place from is called the place of the world. It'll come out later. Place of the lower part of it will be. The place of the world of Bai will be the place for the world of, and will be the place for the world of Asar. After that, there was a coupling in the L. There was a coupling on phase 2/1 in the second restriction. So we had a coupling which laid filled this vessel to the. This place was divided into above and above. I'm writing that their state was face to back. This state is called smallness of the world of Neki. Afterwards, there was a coupling on phase 4/3 with on the next record. From that the light came to Keter and to Abba, went through the pulsar. When it passed through above, so below, Abba and below here, the shattering of the vessels took place. From the shattering of the vessels, this vessel that shattered was divided into 8 parts. We didn't learn this, right? So here, we have T. This is in the goof, and this is the. Again I'm writing. Just above are already face to face. This is Rosh, and this is goof. The goof are tens. And from these 10, we have the first 9, and now what happens here? In all the goof you have 8 parts, called the 8 mime 8 kings. And in every king, there's a vessel. The vessel is the tip of the, and the rest is 4 parts in every vessel. So, asterisk 4 is 32. In Gematria it's, Laitman is 30 and 2 is, meaning we have all in every vessel 32 parts. If we have the first 9, so it's 9, and if each one of them has 32 parts, so it's 288. In Gematria it's 288, and Mal only has 1 part, which is 32, so together it's, plus, it's shat, or same thing if you do 32 asterisk, 10, 320 parts, no matter which way you want to calculate it. What does that mean? It tells us that all in the shattered vessel, there are 320 parts that have to be corrected. In which way? 288 parts don't belong to Malut, and only the part of the Mal which is called Orler, it means heart. So the stony heart, that's the only part that cannot be corrected. The stony heart or the heart of stone, and the 288 you can correct. Can you return the part about the 8? There, the 8 are the 8 kings there. 8 parts of development in the shattering of the vessels. Each part is included of, which is 32. So each part that shattered into 32 parts, and we have 10. So 10 asterisk 32 is 320 shattered parts. Out of them, what is possible to correct? What isn't part of Malat? What is part of the first 9's field? So 32 asterisk 9 is 288 parts, which is possible to correct after the shattering of the vessels, and only Mal, that is the stony heart. Its 32 parts cannot be corrected. What is please the first 9? The first 9 from the that we wrote down there is equal to it. It's not in. No is 1 year of 9, and the last one. It's similar here because here it's live, and also there it's 32, and also 32 there is 1. It includes 32 parts. Okay, you can ask. It won't help anyway, but you can ask. I remember myself. So that's easy. Within a month or 2, people get it. For me, it took I don't know 2 or 3 years. So I started understanding where I am and what's preventing me. This was different 20 years ago that is today. Why is there the stony heart? Why is not possible to be corrected? From the time of the first restriction in the world of from there it can't be corrected. That's where she was restricted. What did you say that I don't want to use my own qualities? I can't receive there in order to be so. I'll use the first 9. What's the first 9 that I'm included? Of the first 9, here too what's going to happen. We'll see a result of the shattering. There are many questions here, and Rav went through many topics here, both the Nikud and the shattering, and Gad prepared a diagram. Let's do a little bit of a recap of the material that we've been through so far. Let's try and understand where we are, because we're really in an advanced state where it's speaking about the greatness of the world of the shattering. The different parts. 32. How's this all connected to what we learned in the past? So we learned that after the first restriction, the first came out, performed a coupling by striking in the rush, and the light expanded to the of Galar. In the light did not expand, that's why. As a result, in the of Galar a record remains. The light of expanded below. In Galar on coarseness of phase 4 then. Because in the rush of Garter there was a decision how much to receive, let's say 20% in the Galar, which means that in the 80% cannot be received, but because there was a calculation in the as a result, this decision as much as to receive, it's also decision as much as not to receive, meaning as a result, the light of expands here below the isab, and this is assume, so tabula refineses itself because of the beating of the inner and external lights, and the next called up comes out. Galar is coarseness of phase 4 and up is a coarseness of phase 3. It refineses, and S comes out on phase 2. Then the same with Mar on coarseness of phase 1, and then Bun comes out on coarseness of phase of the root. This is how all the of the world of come out. This is all called the world of. Now after the world of came out, what happens next? So something special happens here. While sacrifices, it loses the record of phase 3 and only remains the phase 2. And since phase 2 is Biner, there was no limitation of expanding below the table. The expanding of below the tab until the taboo was only on the light of that. Why the light of Biner while they come out? The light of Biner descends below the taboo, and here it has the coarseness of phase 2, and it meets the same light of Biner that's below the light of mercy. It meets the coarseness of phase 4. They get to know each other, and as a result, the world of and smallness is born. That's called. What do they include? They have 10. So we have, and 2/3 of. Why? Because is the Biner the group, and below the we have third of. Here there was already a place made for the worlds. What's a place? It's the deficiency for the worlds afterwards as a result of different processes that will keep coming. So the world of will be born here, then in the third of the world of Breer, then in the world of, and in the world of. Here for now there's only a place for the worlds, not the worlds themselves. So, what happens when the light descended below the taboo? It expanded below, and here was divided into 2 parts. The first part where you can work with it, which is, since they are vessels of bestow, and the part you cannot work with even though you're receiving the light of you. Can't work with them because they are vessels of reception, which is the third. And this limitation of not being able to work with part of these vessels that are below the pulse, this is called the second restriction, or in other words, you could say that ascended from to the third of. This limitation here that you cannot work, this is called the second restriction, meaning if the first restriction says that you cannot work at all, without with any, only if you have an intention to bestow. That's why here the light was rejected from the. Now according to the second restriction, you can work, but only with part of the vessels, and with the vessels below you cannot work. Where do the records ascend to? If that descended below, they rise to the wash of Tsai. Since I is it performs all the calculations of what's happening below the because. When did the S come out? When sagrifine. That's why is that is in charge of everything happening here. It ascends to the side, makes a calculation on 2 types of records. One is on the coarseness of phase 4, it's the bigger coarseness, and the second on phase 2/1, restricted. Why is it restricted? Because it's restricted already in the second restriction, and there's a limitation. You remember the course in set 1 below, 2/1, it's restricted with the second restriction. That's why you get 2 different couplings here. Now for a birth of the new world called the world of Nicodem. You always take the easier, which is the restricted 2/1. These records ascend to, and as a result the world of Nicium and Cot was born, the world of Nicodem, which is restricted. According to the second restriction, that's called smallness, you can only use part of the vessels, so the first that comes out in the world of is called, afterwards the called, and afterwards comes a called Z or Z. I'll explain this in a moment, and then there are very deep explanations. We're not going to get into this, because doesn't get into this, it's just a quick brief. So the first is only in it's the top part, it's the lower part is restricted under the second restriction, that's why we're not using it. Then there's a, and then, or, so again the first, which is only, it's got only a part you can use. Then the part you can't use, you don't work with it. This is called the you don't work with it. The second comes out and with the lower part with the it cannot be used. And the third part that comes out is of, and also it's a that is below. You can also not use this part in, meaning the world of, it's actually 3 and they're all also in, you can only use and, but it's the continuation is already in this already because each one of them, it's in the below it, so the oft is in the there is in the of or zone, and the zone is below the pulsar. This is an expression of those records that are called phase 2/1 restricted, and from them the world of is born, of smallness, the small. Now again those same records ascend back to the and say, now we want to implement the desire of coarseness of phase 4. For this reason we need greatness, then a special light comes, we're not going to get into it, it's called the light of it, comes from through and creates greatness in the first. What is greatness? What does it mean that if before you couldn't use, now you can, becomes firmer, it becomes intense that you can work with all of it, then as a result of the continuation of that demand for realizing the coarseness of phase 4. We're not going to go into too many details here. Also about get greatness, it sees that Ket can receive greatness, and it also demands a greatness as a result. Also get greatness. Now Ket of above are called the of clothing of coarseness. There's no problem in receiving 10 because also when you get it, it's the only calculates, it doesn't really receive and practice, but as a result of this, because the are in the of, also Z ask for greatness, and then the light comes through and enters, which is in. Now it wants to enter Z, but Z buckets are below the pulsar, and here is where a shattering happens. What is this shattering? It means that the light comes which is greater than the screen's ability to work with it. It's greater with the screen's ability to reject it. That's why it causes that same part called is shattered into parts. It's shattered into 320 parts. 320 parts. There are stages of this shattering. It's called the 4 kings, and each one of them has, 8 kings. 8 times 4. 4 phases. This equals 32, since each one of them has 10. So times 10, this equals 320. So all in all we have 320 parts, but because only the part of you cannot use, that's why it explains here that the 320 is divided to, which is 288 plus 32. The 32 is mal, and the 288 are the first 9. This is the picture, meaning after the state of the world of Nicodem, and here was a nut, then the light came and entered in, wanted to do also, and here the 8 kings came out 8 attempts to enter that. Each one of them made a shattering, each shattering in 4 phases. Every one of these phases has 10. So all in all it's 320 sparks shattered parts that from. Then there's a division into 288 plus 32. 288 because it belongs to the first 9 that somehow you can correct them, and these 32 that remained here below are parts that you cannot correct because they belong to mal. So this is called in gematria, it's meaning the heart of stone. It's only corrected in the end of correction. So more or less till here is what we learned in all the parts till now, including this lesson. Now let's answer questions, please. This division to 8 kings. When did that happen? Because we know there are theirs. This first 9 in there's all kinds of divisions, and suddenly 8 kings came. Where did that come from? This division of 8 kings. Rav didn't enter the explanation about that in the lesson, but what's important is what shattered. What is the world of Nicodem? In the world of Nicod, what's in the world of Nicodem? The first is called, then, right, and then what? So, did not break. It can't be that the will shatter. Abanima did not shatter. Who shattered? Said, and from there are all those parts. That's it. Because it starts. It start going to this and Rav explained it very simply. It's one part. It is 10 and that's how it shattered. That's what Jilla drew here, about the shatterings. We hear easier the question about the shattering that it happened as a result of the second restriction, but is the shattering really also over? Is it going over the laws of the first restriction? Yes, of course. What does the first restriction say? You cannot receive within the desire to receive. You can only receive in the first line is restricted. What happened in the second restriction? There doesn't matter that this restriction was expanded even more. It expanded from up to here up to now until you can't receive also. So where can you receive? Only Ra drew the right. He defined it as, but here below the true vessels of reception you cannot receive. But it's the same law, the desire to receive you cannot receive. It's the restriction, the first restriction. Moss, I'll continue. It's question why is it 8 if only that was shattered that. It's the last 7. So why is it 8? Again said didn't explain it, but nevertheless there are 4 attempts to enter from Abba and Matizat. Abba and Aya are the cause causation for the shearing because they want to deepen to the ability to receive greatness like they did. Also the question is how do they do this? If they know that they will shatter. There's many other questions here in the matter and Abba and Amma work by 4 phases. The first part is called the kings of that and the upper third of and then there are the kings. It's the bottom third of, so those are the 8 kings. And at the moment we can't enter to why it is. There are very beautiful explanations, but it will simply have to dive here into many other explanations. We want to go according to the level that Rob explained it, not to enter into more than that, but we need to remember now there's the kings of Dagat, there's the kings of 4 and 4 altogether. 8 kings have 1. Why was the light able to go below the pillar when there's also the first and second restriction and a screen? How can creation that has so many mechanisms to protect let the light go below the pulsar? And as a result there was a shattering of the vessels. You're right, they're correct, but Gilad explained now and Rav explained that the records ascended from below. The records rose to every record gives birth to a next. So the first time the Patup of Nicodem was born upon the records Bet Alf with the restriction, and then the records of 43 also demand its greatness, its gut. And there's also a coupling about that. In the right in the already not in, but in P, and then upon that emerges the world of Nicodem in Gadlut, and then the light descends. Until the par the light didn't descend. Below the para right it's called, and we will explain that later, but it only descended to the didn't descend. Below, but the shadowing already took place, hence the laws are absolute. They are not cancelled. The law of the second restriction does not let the light descend below, hence the shadowing took place, but the fact that it wants to go below there and already touches it, that's a shattering, and the reason is in that there shouldn't have been a shattering, but on the other hand, if there wasn't, so wouldn't have been born, and there wasn't concealment, and the thought of creation couldn't take place, meaning there is something here. There is a process in that came in an ascent, and there was a calculation. So above don't know they are performing a shattering, but they think they can really give greatness according with keeping the laws. So it's like not like a mistake. It's part of the thought of creation in order to create the state of the created being, and then it repeats itself also with Adam is born. You know the story of the eyeball. It thought it could eat from the tree of knowledge, but it couldn't. So it's not mistakes. It's not malfunctions. It's planned in this way. For this world that is disconnected from spirituality could come out where we're in order to read everything that are explaining, and a free desire will awaken in us to climb back to this place where the Kabish are telling us about. If there wasn't a shattering, none of this would have happened, and there would only be a still world. We said that in Galler she makes a calculation in how much she can receive and how much she cannot receive. And in the part from to there's the expansion of the part of, because the force is not to receive it's also pleasure, but it's not the pleasure of the light of, we call it the pleasure of the light of, because against this vessel of the there are lights of the vessel not receiving, surrounding play against that you have there of there. And also in the sag we say there's an expansion of what's the difference between correct the expansion of inner and then and what happens here actually with this 43 the incorporation of 42. First of all, let's summarize that the light of doesn't have a limitation to go below right because it's the light. It's the light of bestow. The light of is the light of the purpose of creation. That's why we have to limit it. If also the restriction was on the light of notedom, that's why there's no problem expanding below taboo. Not only is there no problem wherever you can bestow, you bestow. So also below taboo, an opportunity to bestow is great. That's called that first the world was created. Inequality of judgment according to the first restriction saw that it could not exist, and then mercy came, meaning the expansion of the below is in order to do something that couldn't have been done without it. Otherwise, the world of a would have been created, and that's where creation would have end. It wouldn't be used below double. Now, what's the difference between the light of mercy of phase 4 to the light of mercy of phase 1? It's a great difference. First of all, in coarseness, phase 4 is much greater than phase 2. Second is by expanding below. So like as someone explained before, we'll take an example. Let's say you decided that you're not going to eat anything sweet. Why? Well, doctor said you're sick, so you don't eat sweet. You don't touch it. All this is great, but now you go next to a bakery and you see all those wonderful things that are there, but still in the bakery, you find with all those great smells and cakes and chocolates, everything you see there, you see a cucumber, and you say, even though I can't have all this, I'll calculate that I'm not allowed to, still I can't have the cucumber, and you eat it. So that's, let's say it's there, but the whole other bakery you saw before you didn't eat. So there's a force to overcome that. You already checked that it works. It's not just a decision not to eat sweet. You sat at home and decided. You went and you got all the opportunity to receive, but you didn't use it. We gave a corporeal example, but in spirituality, it's a lot beyond this, because it's bestowing, it's contact with the Creator. The contact with the Creator remains still more important. Even though all the pleasure in the will to receive, you decided not to use it. And that's the expansion of the light of mercy below taboo. In Sag, that's something completely different already. Sag loses hoarseness of phase 3. It had when Sag came out. It came out on phase 3 over 2. Those are the tam it expanded from above downward according to 32. This is the emergence of Sag here. From above downward according to phase 3 over 2. When it refineses, it loses phase 3 of clothing and remained with only phase 2 ease. Again, we didn't go into this because didn't elaborate on it, but there is each one of these is a coupling on its own. It's an expansion from from below upward. When it happens on phase 2, the light of suddenly, there's an opportunity to go below the taboo. So it's already a coupling by on, striking on the light of mercy and expanding below, so it's a lot more active than phase 4. That only came out from not receiving, but still it's only on phase 2. So there's a big difference between whether the light of mercy shines on phase 2 or phase 4. But because of their qualities, they learn how to know each other here. These two qualities that descended below the taboo. And what happens between them now? Between these two qualities, now nothing can happen. Why? Because they need to ascend to, and to ask for a coupling. Just the question is, what are they asking the coupling for? So first of all, what was created here, that already if the expansion of the Sag, there was a second restriction here, descended on phase 2 and also bet disappeared, and only phase 2 over 1 was remained, and every desire to expand gets a new limitation. You can only expand on this is, and on the you can't, to what's below the pal, and below it's this limitation is the first thing that happens, which means that ascended from below upward, in a sense from here to the. It now controls all the part from the below, its darkness, a limitation just as it was before, and now it's below the, meaning that you can only work with the vessels that are here, and according to that you see that, and only expand below above the. You don't use the naught, and this is the first world that came out the world. In smallness according to the second restriction. Till here it's okay, but there's also phase 4, that once, and that wasn't restricted in the second restriction. It expanded and it's here. It's waiting for realization, and if you can realize the purpose of creation, why not? You can do something with it, and here's the whole process we were talking about till really there's an attempt to go below the, and that party goes against the law of the first restriction. AI knows the answer. He asked in order to awaken it. So once the opportunity to go below the came, they tried to do it, and discovered that they couldn't. That there's no force of the screen. You see, that you're trying to receiving, and you have no screen, that's a shattering.